In the late 90s, things were very difficult post foot and mouth and mad cow disease. So we started having a conversation with our neighbours because a lot of them were in the same boat, and we collaborated, and we've gone from what was originally about 1,000 acres, and we're now combining just over 3,000. So I work with 5 or 6 different neighbouring farms, and we run share farming, contract farming agreements, whereby we pool resources in terms of labour and machinery. We farm the whole thing as one to try and get economies of scale, which means that they can grow a crop. If next door farmer's only got 500 acres, it's very difficult to do that at a cost with the price of commodities as they are, effectively and efficiently. They can't afford to do it. So by pooling those resources and growing a big acreage, we can afford to keep our costs very, very low and work together. So we do that as a team. It's quite complicated because we have 5 or 6 different farms who still are different businesses, but from the practicalities of growing a crop, we are as one. So we bring all the grain back to our own farm at Moor. We market it for them. We effectively have a profit share on each different farm. So in a good year, that's great. In a bad year, it's not so good. But it means they can stay on the farm. They can make use of their buildings probably through diversification, which is very necessary when the economics of growing a crop are pretty tight. And we've done the same thing here. And the rotations are much the same. They're based around wheat, oilseed rape, winter oats, winter barley, soybeans that we're trying this year for the second year. So we try and keep it diverse and hopefully don't grow a great break crop any more than one in probably 6 years to try and keep the soil health up together. We're really interested here in soil health. We haven't ploughed anything on this farm for nearly 20 years. And we were stuck in a fairly tight rotation of wheat, oilseed rape, wheat and beans. And what we started to see was a gradual decline of those break crop yields and a gradual increase in injurious grass weeds like blackgrass, which are becoming resistant to the chemistry that we use. So we really have taken a decision to try something different, because if we carried on that path, we were going to get to a point where some of these fields behind here were going to become unfarmable. So we work on non-inversion tillage here. So the ground that I'm stood on, we've just embarked on a 5-year soil health project, which is a collaboration between the Rother Valley Farmers Group and it's funded by Southern Water. So the local water companies are getting really involved because they're concerned about nitrates, pesticide runoff, all those sort of things. So these fields are going to be looked at for 5 years, particularly with regards to nitrogen runoff. They'll be tested biannually, both before and after harvest, so we can get a better idea of our nitrogen usage, whether we're using too much, how that crop's utilising that nitrogen and what's getting lost into the watercourse. So soil, air and water quality are 3 really important things that farmers need to make sure that they're trying to improve on. And you'll see here, this field here, we've just harrowed the stubble, and this is going to go into a crop of soybeans, which is a new crop that we're growing this year, which is designed to lengthen our rotation between the oilseed rape and the beans. Hard crop to grow because it's not designed to be grown in the UK, it's designed to be grown much further south in America and southern Europe. But we think that it's got a really good fibrous root system. It gives us an alternative to it, and it gives us the winter to put a cover crop in here of black oats and phacelia. So we're going to use the root systems to do the cultivation and hopefully direct drill those soybeans straight into it. And then when those soybeans are finished, which will be next October, we will then come here and direct drill a crop of winter wheat straight into that. So this field will effectively not be cultivated for at least the next 2.5 years. And the effects that has on soil health, on worm counts, on water penetration and all those things are, we think, hopefully beneficial. It's very hard to quantify the economic benefit to that. Sometimes farmers are going to do intuitively what they think is right. And sometimes you can't cost those things, but that's the sort of thing that my grandfather was doing post-war. You know, using integrated crop management practices, to using cultural techniques to get on top of grass weeds, using crop rotations and different cropping to avoid those issues. What we were doing was constantly growing autumn crops, drilling them early because we were trying to maximise the yields, and what we ended up with was lots of grass weed problems, lots of soil health issues, and that's totally unsustainable. So we're on this path to try and improve that, and I think we're hopefully doing a good job. If we dug a hole here now, then we'll see that this hasn't been cultivated. See, this effectively falls to bits. You see those fibrous root systems that are in the soil. They're very small, but they will create a capillary action, let water drain, let nutrients move. And of course we've got our friends the earthworms there, which are absolutely crucial to soil health, to restructuring soil without the need for a bit of metal. So this is what you want to see. It just falls to bits. Absolutely no need whatsoever. If you look very closely at the soil structure, there's another one. So that earthworm there, in an undisturbed soil, that earthworm's going to cast a hole at depth, probably down to the clay, which here is only about 8 to 10 inches deep. And if we don't disturb that, that's going to create a pathway for water and air and roots to effectively do that job for us. So really, really important little critters. The more of those we can encourage, the better. The mycorrhizal fungi and the lifeblood that's in that soil will be active as long as there's something growing in it, which is why it's important to have a cover rather than a bare stubble. So this will be drilled as soon as it dries up, hopefully next week, with a oat and phacelia cover crop, which will be here all winter, and then that'll go straight in to the soybeans in the spring. We're here in a 10-hectare field of spring barley, and we've come here because what I'm standing in is a 6-metre wide perennial wildflower strip. And this is the first year we established them in the spring, and we've done this every 90 metres within this field. So we have 3 strips throughout the field, and we also have a 6-metre wildflower margin on both ends of the headland, which is a bit of a challenge because it's created 3 fields from what was one efficient 10-hectare field. So practically it's got some implications, but the reason we've done it is because we're finding the lack of chemistry that we're now experiencing, both through resistance, insecticide resistance with aphids and flea beetle, and also the lack of seed dressing that's been revoked over the last few years, particularly with flea beetle in oilseed rape and deter seed dressing in cereal crops. We have issues with aphids transmitting barley yellow dwarf virus, with flea beetles taking a crop before it's even emerged. And what we think is happening is that within these arable fields, they're very devoid of insect life, both pollinators and beneficials. So we've put these flower strips in here, hopefully to try and create an environment within that field where those pollinators and those beneficials will thrive, and hopefully do that job of controlling those pests that are having a massive effect on the production of our crops effectively. Whether it'll work or not, I'm not too sure. Very hard thing to try and quantify, but we're doing this here to see if A, it's practical, and B, if we can see a benefit. It looks quite weedy at the moment because it's first year of establishing it, and because they're perennial and it's gone into an arable field, we have quite a lot of annual weeds competing against it. So we have a lot of sour thistle, you can see here, and it'll take quite a bit of management over the next 12 months to try and get them established. So we will, once the barley's been harvested, we'll come in here and cut and remove the entire lot. I've actually mowed this 3 times this year already to make sure that the annual weeds stay tight and the perennial wildflowers establish. And when you look in the sward, there's lots of bird's foot trefoil, oxeye daisies, crimson clover, wild carrot, all these things. They're open flowering perennial flowers that will hopefully encourage pollinators to try and do a really good job for us throughout the cropping season. And we've put a spring crop in here, and we're going to do double spring cropping here because this is also a very bad blackgrass field. So while we're doing something here to try and encourage beneficial insects, we've also had to do something cropping wise to try and get on top of a blackgrass issue, which has resulted in us having a spring crop of barley here, and that'll be followed by a crop of spring beans, and we'll be cover cropping that with a very heavy oil radish, phacelia, black oat, crimson clover cover crop mix post-harvest between now and the spring. So this won't have an autumn crop in it for 2 years in an attempt to try and get on top of blackgrass pressure, and it'll also give us a couple of years to try and establish these margins. And then when we go back into a wheat crop, which is our most profitable crop, in 2 years' time, hopefully these margins will be established. We'll have beneficial insects to try and predate the aphids in the autumn. The soil structure will be much better because it's had 2 cover crops in it, and the blackgrass will be under control because we've had the winter to try and get on top of that issue. So it's not just one thing, and every field has those problems. Every field's got blackgrass issues, it's got soil structure issues, it's got lack of beneficial problems. So this field we're using as a bit of an experiment to try and tie in all of those things and integrate our crop management to a point where the practical measures we're doing trying to achieve multiple things, not just one thing. There's actually quite a lot here. We've got the crimson clover that's just coming to the end of flowering, which is this beautiful purple flower. We've got down in the bottom here, very hard to see, but there's some wild carrot, and that'll take another year to get established and start flowering. We have some bird's foot trefoil, if I can find any. There's some here, down in the bottom here. These small yellow flowers, you see them there? These beautiful little small yellow flowers. They'll get quite big, the bird's foot trefoil, that'll come up here. And there's some oxeye daisies down behind us. Some knapweed, wild carrot, crimson clover, and then some cocksfoot grasses in there to try and keep those perennial wildflowers up in the air and well established. So it's a nice mix of open flowering varieties. We can see there's plenty of insects in here already. This is only year one, and we're going to be looking at this for 5 years to see if it's beneficial. And once we get, hopefully by next spring, once we've got this annual weed burden out of the way and these crops are getting well established, we'll have to top them off once a year when they finish flowering. And what we might try and do is try and use that sward that we collect, which will be full of seeds, and re-establish that on some of our grass margins and field corners that are currently just full of native grass species. So it feels right, it looks good. There's plenty of food here. It's full of beneficials already, and it can't do any harm. Whether it'll pay for itself or not is another question. But from an environmental point of view, it's a fantastic thing. From the public's point of view, it's also very good for farmers to be seen to be doing this out of their own back, out of their own pocket, because we do really care about the countryside and we care about the environment, and we try and marry productive arable crop production with a fantastic crop of spring barley behind us with this. You know, we can do both. It doesn't have to be one or the other. And what we're trying to do here is try and strike a balance between the two.